Değerli misafirler, küresel ticaretin geleceği dijital dönüşümden geçiyor. Dijital dönüşümün bir sonraki aşaması ise kendi kendini yönetemeyecek kadar karmaşık. Şimdi bu cümlelerin sahibi Accenture Digital, Ortadoğu ve Türkiye Ülke Lideri ve Yönetici Ortağı Sayın Xavier Anglada'yı davet edeceğim. Dijital parçalara ayrılmış olan dünyada nasıl yol alacağız? Bu dijital yolda yıkıcı teknolojilerin kontrolünü ele geçirmenin kilit konularını, bu kilidi açmanın yöntemlerini, yeni ve ana organizasyonel mimariye giden rotayı dinlemek üzere Digital Transformation Journey başlıklı sunumuyla Mr. Xavier Anglada'yı alkışlarınızla huzurlarınıza davet etmek istiyorum. Please welcome Mr. Anglada. Welcome, sir. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Xavier Anglada, digital lead of Accenture in the region. It is a real pleasure for me and for the company to be here behind you and sharing some of the things, some of the trends we believe that digital transformation is experiencing across the world. And let me start by explaining a bit about us. Accenture is a multinational company, over 430,000 employees, slightly bigger than Activity, Ahmed. And as such, we do work across sectors globally. We have offices in 150 countries and we work in 100 countries, which means that everything related to digital and to globalization sits at our very core of our business on the day-to-day. And I really like how Murat opened or briefed this for next year conference. It's about breaking the wall. Let me put over the next few minutes our views about this wall, right? That yes, technically we should be, because it's digital, it's open walls, there's no, it's an open garden. We're no longer talking about nationals and we're not talking about ring-fenced digital. Actually, there's a trend that is telling us that maybe things are not going exactly that way. I'm going to share you some thoughts about that, and I'd like to hear inputs as well if you do have from where you, executive leaders in technology, in IT, from the leading companies here in Turkey and multinationals as well, are suffering or are experiencing on your side. So let me start with by sharing one data point. Let me see if we can make this work. Good. So we are seeing ourselves, we've done a survey over a multiple number of countries, CIOs, CTOs of hundreds of leading companies, multinationals, and we're seeing that 86% of the responses saying that they're seeing their IT strategies being affected by a fragmented wall. And what do we mean a fragmented wall? We mean a wall that is increasingly more difficult to move people around, products and services across borders. We're going to talk about why. Because there's new things about globalization. We're starting to find nationalisms, we're starting to find fragmentation on politics that do not allow digital players to operate seamless across the geographies. And this goes against the traditional globalization that we experienced in the previous 15 to 20 years. And of course, all these threats are hindering innovation. And this 86%, I'm starting with a bit the end view, right? There's a number of trends that are telling that globalization, maybe we're talking to the globalization 2.0, it's more a deglobalization. We're seeing some of these trends no longer continuing, and we want to see what are they and how we can work around as executive in the key companies. So, one of the things that I need to share with you is some background about the reasons behind this trend. And if you look at protectionism and policies that try to protect the individual national or regional agendas are starting to increase dramatically across the global footprint. And this has a massive implication, right? We're seeing that in the last 6 years, the measures have quadrupled. We were in the 200s, 300s early 2010, and we're talking about over the 1200 today. And this is increasing, right? And of course, this has an impact. If you look at the global trade, while in the beginning of the 2000s, 2003 to 2007, we saw global economy, global trade of products increasing by 7%, when you take it last year, it only grew by 1%, right? And you will see that this is not a minor impact. When we talk about services as well, the growth last year was only 0.1%. So, yeah, we're breaking the wall, but there is much less trade overall happening. And this, another important point that is as well a proxy towards globalization is FDI, how the different countries exchange investments, right? And we've seen that we are not yet where we were pre-crisis. And yes, we can say that we've been in the longest bull market since I would say the late 30s or the mid-30s when we have the global recession. But the reality is that we are still suffering from that part, and overall FDI is not growing at the pace we were in 2007, 2008. So you may say, well, it doesn't matter, but the reality is that we believe it matters, and it matters a lot, because when you see about data and OECD data points, so there's a saying that says if there is 1 additional percentage point of growth in trade, this has an impact in terms of economic inclusion, especially to the bottom of the pyramid people, that it's between 0.9 to 3%. So growth on global trade matters, and matters a lot to create inclusion across, right? And of course, who has been the key enablers or drivers of globalization? When you break down the figures about global trade, you see that one of the group of companies that have been massively impacting that are the global big digital players. How is that? Well, you see the WeChats, the Facebooks, the Amazons have been massively bringing value across a big part of the population that were completely left out, because they brought very convenient services at a very affordable access cost, and opened these ring-fence gardens that we had before, right? And when we talk about global trade, everything is steered by multinational companies, right? Because they are the ones that broadly exchange the big mass of the services. And we're talking this very personally, because we're a multinational company. We're present across all those countries, and we face ourselves a lot the situation of when there is restrictions, when there is limitations, and so on. And of course, when you talk about poverty, you need to make sure that the investment to reduce this poverty, we need to talk about inclusion, and the investment we do on the top, on every percentage point we invest on the top of the pyramid of the income, has a much lower elasticity on growth, because the wealthier people have less prone to expend more. But if you do the same, but in the bottom of the pyramid, which is steered by these digital players, because the open trade has helped bringing a lot of the massive poverty significantly down. Over the last 20 years, there's been 1 billion less people in the poverty line in the world. Most of them, 680 plus, came from China themselves, right? So it does make sense that there is openness in the policies to make sure that there is global transitioning of goods and services and access to this bottom of the pyramid into these services, that this brings inclusion in a better way. And of course, the digital players have been great contributors on that, but on the other side, this regulation we've seen that is increasing protectionism and so on, has made that data flows are starting to be more regulated globally. And this is not easy, because yes, I've heard many times that data is the new oil. I would even say that it's not the new oil, it's more than the new oil, because data, different to oil, can be reused, can be augmented, and can be further create value out of it, right? So if there is a proper flow of data, you're creating really, you're creating the fabric for the global trade at a much better position. Of course, you need to put security, you need to put privacy and so on, which definitely needs to be there. But there is these two parts of the wall, right? The one that puts policies in and the one that tries to break and create more an open garden. Then, here is where, you know, politics, policies come into stage. And yes, all the measures of protectionism and reduce the overall growth, right? And reduces as well the equality capability. But said that, not only that, but it creates a sentiment in multinationals that is today is been significantly more negative than it was in the past. We've taken to make this assessment. We reviewed 45,000 key media prints and assessed what is the sentiment against multinational presence in the different countries. And we're seeing that it's significantly decreasing. It's impacted by this protectionism, by these limitations, these barriers, and so on. These have a massive impact to many of you, to the executives around the table, but as well the ones we've interviewed, right? And this impact has that out of all the CIOs and CTOs we've interviewed, 74% of them say that these measures are creating significant challenge for them to continue to invest abroad, to continue to think about entering in new markets, to continue to launch new services, because they're seeing the risk today. And we're not talking about a small fraction. We're talking about 74%, right? And this is over the next 3 years. And so, yes, when we break the wall, we need to make sure that we need to do it at bringing the two parties. One, the business side, but as well the regulation, the policy making side. And of course, these business implications about this effect are very tangible today, right? So we're saying rising IT costs. We're expecting IT costs, and this is basically 86% of the survey, the answers were that we're expecting IT costs to increase, operational complexity in the companies you run to increase, compromise digital growth plans, and as well the need to revise the strategies, right? So it's not a minor thing to consider. And let me zoom in on these points, because I think there are quite some interesting points that I think worth to put on the table. First, the IT cost will rise. 91% believe that IT costs will rise, and this will have a direct impact into the services we provide to end customers, which means that we will all suffer. Out of this protectionism, we'll have much more costs for the services we are now getting, right? And this is not a minor impact into the individual and the company's pockets. But as well, complexity. And complexity is important, right? Because globalization has been able to spearhead and to put together companies, services in an efficient way spread out across the world, especially on the multinational part that we've seen before, how relevant they are in the overall growth of global trade. So the complexity will be affected in a number of dimensions, right? So one, security. Security will need to put some additional investments on security. Cross-border communication. Of course, you're going to have presence in many more places, countries that today maybe you were tackling it in an integrated manner. And this will in itself affect the effectiveness of the effort, and the complexity will increase. Of course, this will imply more integration work. So we'll need to do much more effort to integrate the different pieces of the pie that before were together, now they're going to be separated. And of course, talent. Yes, in the short run, there's going to be more employment, but it's going to be more an inefficient use of the capability. So talent is going to become even more scarce than it is today. And of course, more red tape into it, right? The third point, it's about digital capabilities will be compromised. And you guys have invested in your companies a lot around the key elements, cloud, analytics, and so on. The reality is that this trend, the CIOs and the CTOs and executives we've interviewed saying that cloud services will be compromised. Why? Because data, where data needs to sit, yes, in the cloud, but in my country, right, in the local. So we're starting to lose a bit the global view on this, right? Cross-border analytics. One of the big advantages to offer services is to be able to leverage trends and to be able to connect the dots. Well, with data privacy, with much more restricted access to data, we are not enabling that, right? And of course, operations across national IT standards will need to be adapted, so this will bring as well complexity. And final point is that the implication of this will have that we will have to broadly revise all our technology and IT plans. Because when we were talking one and maybe have a global strategy, now we're going to have to talk two dimensions, a global but very localized as well implementations of that, right? And this will bring global IT architectures being needed to be revised. The physical IT, where do we have the hardware, where do we have the equipment, the technology, the teams and so on will be revised, but as well cybersecurity. The more you start creating atomized views about the reality, this brings complexity and brings eventually other risks on the table. So, that was a bit the, what can we do with, to address this situation? The first thing is that we have plenty new technologies that, and one of our claim as a company that once internally we are part of this global transformation and we are part of this threat, we would like to say that the best way to approach this is to consider within your strategies the plethora of new technologies that are on the space today. And of course, a lot of you guys are, I'm sure, investing in a few of them, but you need to create the fabric, the innovation fabric within your companies to make sure that big data, cloud, Internet of Things, we saw from Ahmed, the amazing opportunities of IoT platforms and so on, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and 3D printing can bring. Let me put you an example. So we've lived in an era in late 90s, 2000s of delocalization, right? So offshoring and so on. With all these technologies, automation, 3D printing, and so on, one of the trends we're seeing is that there is an onshoring. There is the capability to bring, because one of the things of the offshoring is that it requires a lot of logistics nightmare to bring, and that's why the maritime routes across have grown so much lately. But now, when we came on automation and onshoring, you can bring the logistics and the cost to serve lower by producing in an automated and leveraging the new technologies closer. So this is an opportunity, for instance, that many of you or some of you may be willing to explore. And this is some of the things we're working significantly with the big players, the multinational players as well, to make sure that they can see the world, but now on a globalized, but on a localized arena. And to close, let me close with 4 remarks about what we believe you need to have in your agendas. The first one is that you need to make sure that this discussion we're having today sits at your board. So you need to have a new lens into the localized type of IT technology strategy due to these restrictive measures of data flows and so on in the board discussions. And as such, it will need to impact your business plans and your strategies. 2, you'll need to look for local advantage. It means that you really need to crystallize the connecting dots between a global view, what is your play, and how you're going to execute locally. So it's very important that you are genuinely local on what you do across all the markets. 3, you need to de-risk data. Data is the engine for growth, and now is that threat with these trends. So what we believe is that you need to reassess what is the core data you have, where does this core data reside, what are you using it for, and based on that decide where it needs to sit. Apologies. So where it needs to sit, at the global level or in a, let's say, more localized area. And 4, we strongly believe, and we would be really happy to have discussions around you about how you can embrace the new technologies within your day-to-day, within your DNA. Because now you're going to have to innovate locally, and you're going to have to bring all this technology into how you operate effectively and efficiently locally, right? And these are the thoughts we had, and I think, again, to what we said, remember, 86% of people around, such as you, interview globally, think that there is a new trend that maybe will not allow that Pink Floyd's Breaking the Wall happen that easily. It's on us, and we have tools, and we have methods to make this happen.